They didn't even glance in my direction. I stood 5 feet from the champagne flutes near the glass wall that reflected their smiles like they belonged to someone else. Ronan Langley raised his glass eyes locked with the CFO and declared, "To $290 million in the cleanest Q4 in company history." They cheered. I adjusted the sleeve of my blazer. No one noticed I was still holding the final USB drive, still warm, still marked with a tiny scratch from the night I dropped it, reviewing arbitration fallback clauses for the 3rd time. Ronan's voice carried. "None of it's possible without strategic alignment and vision." Strategic alignment. I was the one who rewrote the indemnity scaffolding line by line, the one who fought through vendor red lines and finance posturing, kept the risk index balanced across 8 departments, while they smiled for photographs. No one asked me to join. No one even left a chair open. The tray of cake squares passed right by me. A junior from data science asked if I worked in facilities. I shook my head and walked out. Back at my desk, the gray one tucked behind the fire exit, where no visiting executive would ever accidentally see it, I logged in. The system greeted me with polite indifference. No internal messages, no congratulations. My Slack feed was filled with Ronan's face tagged in conference room selfies, quoting Forbes headlines like gospel. I pulled up the contract ledger. Timestamp 10:41 a.m., PST execution verified, final status active. I hovered over the appendix tree and navigated downward, D1, D3, D6. There, appendix D7, a footnote, 12 words long, not enough to matter to anyone else, but I knew what it carried, what I had buried there quietly years ago. A clause that didn't exist in boilerplate, a defense no one remembered to check. Clause 49C. It had stayed dormant for so long I almost forgot the feeling of seeing it awake again. I didn't click it. Not yet. I just let the screen glow in the dull light of my corner, my name absent from every thread. Then HR pinged. "Ellis, can you step into Glassroom B for a quick sync?" The Glassroom always smelled like citrus cleaner and managed empathy. May from HR greeted me with the kind of smile they're trained to maintain, soft rehearsed and nowhere near sincere. She gestured to a chair I didn't sit in. "We just want to align expectations," she began. Her hand rested on a manila folder precisely angled toward me. "There's been a strategic reassessment of departmental revenue classification." I said nothing. She cleared her throat like the words were caught there. "Effective immediately, your role has been redefined as non-revenue adjacent." She let it hang in the air as though the phrase meant anything at all. I stared at the folder. She took that as invitation and slid it toward me. "Your compensation will be adjusted by 55%, she added. "This is not a termination. It's a repositioning. No severance is necessary." She tilted her head like she expected gratitude for the clarification. I opened the folder. Clean formatting. HR approved font. At the bottom, a signature line. My name already printed, already filled. I hadn't touched this document. They'd lifted it from an older onboarding form, duplicated the lines and dropped it in. May kept talking something about streamlined team integration and long-term structural shifts. I let the words float past me. My eyes caught on a faint smudge of toner in the corner of the page, barely visible, a ripple in something they thought was airtight. "Could I get a full copy of the executed fallacy contract?" I asked. May blinked. Just once. She hadn't expected a request. She recovered quickly. "Of course. I'll send the PDF by end of day." I closed the folder and pushed it back toward her. "No other questions?" she asked, voice pitched upward. "No." She opened the door with one hand and gestured outward with the other, like she was walking me out of a polite dinner. Back in the hallway, someone was taping up photos from the celebration. Ronan posed under a balloon arch, holding a cupcake with a company logo. I walked past a cake that read 290 milli baby in gold frosting. No one looked at me. At my desk, I logged in again. The system hadn't blinked. Not yet. Clause 49C sat there undisturbed, waiting for someone to trip it. Jamal's desk used to sit 2 rows ahead of mine. He wore sharp ties and always brought real mugs from home instead of using the paper ones from the break room. Year 5, he closed the East Coast pipeline deal that saved our biotech arm. 48 hours later, security walked him out with a box and a nod. No party, no memo, just silence. Yvonne went next. She'd shielded us through a federal compliance audit that could have buried the entire company. I watched her rework a 400-page report over 2 weekends, while her daughter FaceTimed her from the kitchen floor, asking when she'd be home. The next quarter, they said her role had become redundant. She cried in the elevator alone. Then Priya. She rebuilt our licensing architecture after it collapsed under the weight of a rushed product launch. 4 weekends, 12-hour shifts, no support. When a new VP came in, her job was quietly renamed and filled by his cousin. She was invited to explore new opportunities. Each time I said nothing, just watched, listened, noticed the patterns, what they praised, what they punished, what they tried to rewrite as evolution. I started documenting, not out of spite, but survival. Screenshots, redline drafts, dates, slips, emails no one thought twice about forwarding. 1 folder became 2. 2 became 16. They thought loyalty looked like silence, that we'd swallow the next hit and keep building. But I remembered. Every keystroke, every call, every line that saved them. I didn't collect war stories. I collected facts. The kind no one deletes because they forget who was in the room. Jamal's access was revoked while he was still training new hires. Yvonne's files were wiped within a day of her exit. Priya's Slack history vanished, but I kept copies. I always did. They erased the names. But the infrastructure, that stayed. I leaned back in my chair and opened the terminal again. Clause 49C was still there, still inactive. All it needed was proof of harm. And today, they finally gave me some. Clause 49C wasn't about revenge. It was a precaution. A quiet pressure valve I embedded into high-value contracts after too many final sign-offs ended with someone like me getting erased. It started as a theory. Could I write something defensible, legal, precise, undeniable that would sit quietly until it was needed? Something that wouldn't scream for attention but would not blink if provoked? The answer was yes. I spent weekends studying arbitration clauses, digital trust frameworks, contract-based fail-safes. The clause itself was short, legalese shaped to pass as standard language. In the event of material compensation variance to directly named stakeholders post-execution platform engagement shall defer to third-party audit hold for review. 12 words. That's all it took. I slipped it into Appendix D7, a section most people skimmed and legal only parsed for typos. It looked like boilerplate. It wasn't. When the clause detects a change, something measurable, something material, it initiates a pause. Not a crash, not deletion, just stillness. Like locking every door while the meeting continues inside, unaware no one can leave. I tested it once years ago, on a dev server sandboxed. The system obeyed. Engagements paused, permissions rerouted, delivery suspended pending resolution. It didn't erase a thing. It simply made the company prove itself to someone neutral and not on their terms. They'd used me. And then they cut my pay like it was overhead. But that one move gave the clause everything it needed. Material deviation confirmed. Named stakeholder, Ellis Ray. Timestamp logged. I opened the ledger again. Every value lined up. My access hadn't been revoked yet. They never revoke right away. That's the tell they always assume you'll absorb the hit and smile through the next meeting. But not this time. The clause didn't activate itself. I had to approve it. 1 click, 1 command. I hovered the cursor over the confirm box, not out of hesitation, out of respect. For the years, the names, the silence it took to write something that might finally speak for me. I clicked. There was no noise, no alarm, no red flashing bar. The screen refreshed itself with a calm so total it felt like apathy. Execution status paused. Just that. No fireworks, no digital ripples. Just compliance like it had always been waiting for someone to say enough. I leaned back, letting the monitor hum softly behind me. My hand was still resting on the mouse, but I was already far from the screen. The click wasn't loud, but it echoed somewhere deeper, something older than code. The part of me that remembered being 17 and told that being low profile was the safest way to stay employed. I had believed it. Then I had documented it. I stood, walked to the tiny kitchenette by the back wall and filled the kettle. The motion was automatic. Water, heat, ceramic mug. A tea bag that expired sometime last spring. It didn't matter. My apartment was quiet, lit only by the fading gray of late afternoon. Behind me, the audit logs were already shifting. The claws didn't operate like a hammer. It moved like steam. It wrapped around everything without disrupting anything visibly. Access permissions suspended, API tokens re-authenticated, internal execution queues deferred. No one would know not right away. To them, it would just look like latency, a hiccup, a strange Monday bug. I sat at the table and watched the dashboard blink again. Contract note engagement suspended pending stakeholder review. My name still wasn't on any thread. No one had asked me if I was okay. Not after the pay cut, not after the ceremony I wasn't invited to. No one even asked where I'd gone. That was the mistake. Not the cruelty, but the assumption that it would go unanswered. I sipped the tea. It tasted like dust and resignation. Still, I drank it slowly. Nothing needed to be rushed now. The system wasn't broken. It was obeying. I opened the encrypted drive. Everything I had built, backed up, logged, and labeled, stared back at me. 10 years of infrastructure performance reviews, bonus reallocations, copied signatures. And in the corner, a single prompt now read, awaiting escalation review. By morning, the tickets had already started piling up. Client onboarding portal unresponsive. Token refresh failed. Dash screen stuck on splash load. Someone in integration flagged a bug in the middleware. QA blamed recent patch deployment. IT began rechecking permissions line by line. I watched it unfold from the sidelines, every error message stacking neatly like a row of apology notes they hadn't written yet. Ronan pinged me at 10:22 a.m. Ronan Langley, hey, quick. Q client, dashboards being weird. Think it didn't deploy Ronan.Langley. Also congrats again on the deal. Total rockstar. I hovered over the message. Let the read receipt settle. Then minimize the window. No one mentioned clause 49C. No one would not yet. They were still too busy solving a fire with spreadsheets. Still convinced the problem was technical, not tactical. By 11:04, a VP floated the idea of a license error. Legal fired off a soft inquiry to our vendor, dancing around terminology. Any recent permissions adjustments we should be aware of that might delay post-signature execution. They didn't say breach. Not yet. They still thought this was fixable. I refreshed the log interface. The system was humming, not failing, just obeying. Locked in exactly the state I designed it to enter. Stillness as compliance. Delay as defense. It hadn't broken anything. It had just stepped back, waited. By noon, someone started a Zoom with 14 people and 0 answers. Terms like regression and shadow dependency bounced around like lint. No one said the word harm. No one said my name. The clause didn't need recognition. It needed conditions, and they'd met them. At 1:14, the dashboard flashed orange. Execution lock confirmed. Stakeholder Delta verified. A chill passed through the room, only no one could feel it yet. I clicked open the final audit shell and ran the index match against payroll logs. Every field turned green. The system had remembered me even when they hadn't. The folder was already zipped, labeled time-stamped check, sum verified, 10 years compressed into 372 megabytes, harmless from a distance, devastating up close. Performance reviews rewritten post-promotion, bonus allocations diverted under budget neutralization, meeting minutes that morphed in final versions, memos that moved numbers with no names attached, NDAs issued with boilerplates so vague it could have buried anyone who questioned them. I hadn't forged anything. I just didn't forget. They assumed I deleted discarded outgrown, but every redaction they thought was clean, I saved a version before they touched it. Every form letter, every unsigned clause, every pay stub I was told not to worry about. The kind of evidence that doesn't shout. It just waits. I opened the neutral review portal and dragged the file in. The system didn't even blink, just processed the upload in under 2 minutes. The confirmation window appeared with clinical indifference, verification complete, notification dispatch queued. The first alerts hit inboxes by 9:31 a.m. Certified emails marked contractual audit action, PHX CUN04. Every executive who'd signed off on my reclassification received one. Every person who'd approved the bonus suppression memo. Every ghostwriter behind the NDA template. By 10:07, the CFO announced he was stepping back to prioritize health. At 10:22, the CTO updated his LinkedIn headline to exploring opportunities. At 10:39, the head of legal requested a one-on-one through the audit portal. I declined. At 11:12, the CEO's assistant forwarded a voicemail to my inbox flagged personal. Finn's voice was syrupy, desperate. "Ellis, hey, just wanted to say we've always valued you. Deeply. If we could just sit down, talk things through." I stopped playback halfway through. Deleted it. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were trying to rewind a clock they didn't realize had already struck 0. By noon, the contract dashboard flagged a new status client inquiry received, external audit pending. That meant they knew. That meant someone on the other end had noticed the hold and traced it back to the structure, and that structure had my fingerprint in every node. The countdown began, 72 hours until contract termination unless the lock was lifted. I didn't rush. I made tea, sat back down, watched the alerts stack up like snowfall. The performance logs no longer whispered. They shouted. Queries timed out. License verification stalled. External tools looped endlessly in provisional states. Nothing failed entirely, it just stopped answering. The kind of quiet that isn't peace, but paralysis. Slack went clinical. No more party gifts or quoting startup wisdom in bold italics, just updates, escalations, and hollow apologies from middle managers who didn't know what they were apologizing for. I refreshed the audit window. Execution suspended. Stakeholder Delta confirmed. Contract PHX 714 arbitration hold in effect. No one had typed my name, not in a thread, not in a memo, but I saw the shape of it in their panic. Meetings multiplied, fingers pointed. Then the silence grew sharper. A chair left empty in the war room. A coordinated response led by people who hadn't touched a contract since onboarding. I didn't respond to any of them. I watched. At 1:42, a legal liaison from the client sent a formal notice they were invoking the correction clause. 72 hours to restore integrity, or the $290 million contract was void. I read the email 3 times. Each sentence was stripped of pleasantries, legal precision with just enough air to scream. By 2:11, they were scrambling. Finn assembled a call with every executive still on payroll. Their voices filtered through my system logs like bad radio, choppy, urgent, half delusional. "This is sabotage," someone hissed. "This is protocol," someone else corrected. And then, in a voice I recognized, just above a whisper, Clause 49C. No one had said it aloud until then. A junior compliance analyst, Pesh, I think, read it off his screen like a ghost story. Buried in Appendix D7, tied to stakeholder compensation changes, authored, time-stamped, and still intact. By the time they turned to ask who approved it, I had already shut my laptop. I stood, stretched folded laundry. The window was open. Wind moved through my apartment like the room finally had space again. In the corner of the screen, the contract's timer kept ticking down. No override, no reset. The email arrived at 11:58 a.m. No subject line fanfare, no preamble. Just a secured PDF with 4 bullet points and a timestamp. Due to unresolved verification lapse and failure to restore access, Integrity Project PHX 714 is hereby dissolved. Funds reallocated effective immediately. Future engagement suspended indefinitely. That was it. No meeting, no call, no final chance to explain, just a flat sentence that unraveled 2 fiscal quarters of projections and 3 years of internal positioning. The $290 million was gone. I read it once, then again, not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. I opened the dashboard. The system's heartbeat was faint but steady. Contract verification flags still red. No onboarding. No API relays, no dashboard data, just a graceful kind of emptiness the way a cathedral sounds after the congregation leaves. No one screamed, there was no meltdown, just erosion, slow, deliberate, and complete. Clause 49C hadn't burned the structure, it had removed my breath from it, and without that breath, it simply couldn't function. By Monday afternoon, 3 vendors terminated support contracts. One issued a public statement citing critical compliance infrastructure failure. Investors followed with whispers that read like eulogies, governance gaps, leadership void, unrecoverable trust. My Slack access expired. I didn't check exactly when. I watched from my new apartment a studio over a grocery store where the walls were quiet enough for me to hear my own kettle whistle. I poured a cup of tea and didn't rush to sip it. For the first time in years, there wasn't anything to monitor, nothing to catch before it broke. Ronan posted a LinkedIn update. Sometimes disruption starts at home. It ended with a stock photo of a man hiking into fog. Comments were disabled. The company scrubbed the fallacy contract from its history. Press kits were pulled, partner pages revised, like they'd never touched it. But I remembered. And so did the system. The audit portal dimmed. Contract resolution window expired. No more flashing warnings. No more action required. Clause 49C executed. I closed the log, stood up, and walked to the window. The new office wasn't sharp-edged or cold. It didn't smell like fear-polished conference tables or lemon-scented dismissal. It was warm, intentional. Every sound felt like it belonged, keyboards tapping a soft laugh down the hall, the low roll of a whiteboard being wheeled across tile. My badge just read, Ellis Ray. No title, no acronyms, no illusion of status to validate my presence. No one asked what I used to do. They already knew. That's why I was here. Jessa Morell, the CEO, met me at the door herself. No theatrics. Just a coffee in one hand and a question in her voice. We don't care how loud you are, she said. We care that the foundation holds. She didn't need to mention Clause 49C. She didn't ask what happened at Fallacy. That story had already moved through the right channels, the quiet ones, the ones that listen more than they post. I spent the morning reviewing a contract from a genomics startup, bright people, naive clauses, too trusting of good intentions. I rewrote the spine, added 2 silent triggers. Nothing destructive, just enough to whisper, if you harm the ones who build this, we will pause until you remember. By lunch, the legal team had sent back a message. This is ruthless. We love it. I didn't rush my reply. At home for the first time in years, my apartment didn't feel like a transit stop. I unpacked books, not just boxes. My desk held 2 things, a blank notepad and a small plaque HR had left as a welcome gift. It read, "Not every firewall is made of code." I looked at it for a long moment. Let it settle. I wasn't there to protect them from destruction. I was there to prevent them from forgetting who kept the floor beneath them from cracking. I opened the archive. Clause 49C was still there, annotated and intact. I didn't delete it. I just let it rest.